For the first time in history, Balloon Fiesta, of course, is not happening this year. We've, of course, been following this historic decision all day here at Action 7 News as we understand how hard this cancellation will hit our already hurting economy. But we also wanted to know, what about the state fair? A lot of you have been asking. Action 7 News reporter Nancy Laughlin did some checking to get answers about our state's next biggest event.
New Mexicans have been enjoying the state fair since 1938. I asked if it's ever been canceled, even during World War II. The answer was no. But this year, well, that's still up in the air.
It is a lot more than fun and games. The New Mexico State Fair pumps 70 to 75 million bucks into the economy each year. A lot depends on weather. This year, though, there's COVID. Multiple state employees declining interviews when we asked if there will be a fair this year. The State Fair General Manager did send a statement saying they are monitoring the Department of Health data, especially when it comes to mass gatherings, that this is a fluid situation, and there are significant logistical and planning challenges. They say health, safety, and well-being of fairgoers and the community a priority. At the fair, traditionally there is music, but very few musical groups are performing right now. There are also rides and the challenge of keeping them clean and sanitized during a pandemic, and all those events with animals. If the decision is made to shut down all this, the fairgrounds will look a whole lot different this year.
We're told that there could be a decision within a week. Nancy Laughlin, KOAT Action 7 News.
We called and emailed the governor's staff regarding the status of the state fair, and we have yet to hear back from them. Lots of questions coming in addition to if the state fair is canceled. Here's what else we are working on right now for you to answer. How will this affect our state's budget as it relies heavily on hospitality revenue? And how will this affect Balloon Fiesta itself, which is a nonprofit? And another question was, what about the Rainbow Riders? The company takes guests up in hot air balloons and sees a big boom in business during the fiesta. We talked with CEO Scott Appleman, who says while he will lose business over this, Fiesta made the right call.
The news is terrible, but it is the right thing to do given the circumstances and the environment that people are in at this time. And, you know, I support the Fiesta 110%.
Appleman says because of the pandemic and Balloon Fiesta's cancellation, Rainbow Riders could lose up to 60% of its normal business this year. They did just reopen this month. We also talked with Doug Gant, the pilot of a favorite balloon hamlet. You see that behind me. This and about his thoughts on the decision and what he's doing now.
Turquoise is where counties want to be. Restaurants can have 75% capacity for both indoor and outdoor. So can close contact businesses. Turquoise is where you'll finally get indoor bar service at 33% capacity. The level right below turquoise is green. Restaurants can open at 50% indoor capacity, and outdoor bars can reopen at limited capacity. The next level is yellow, but a bit tighter restrictions here. This is where Bernalillo County is right now. Restaurants may operate indoor dining at 33%. Bars and clubs are closed at this level. The most restrictive level, the red, only outdoor dining is allowed, and large entertainment venues and bars and clubs, they're closed. The vaccine not having an effect on these changes. New on 7. Guadalupe, again, the only county in red, is leading the state with 46% of its population vaccinated. Right behind them is Luna at 42%, still in the yellow. But our turquoise counties are all holding steady with a percent of their vaccinated population ranging from 24% up to 37%. This shows how with a smaller population, doses and cases can make all the difference.
Mexico has reached its so-called goalpost set by the state. Since the state closed, the governor and health experts have used 8 gating criteria as the way to determine when parts of the state can reopen. Our rate of spread is below its target as well as the test positivity rate. You can see those numbers there on your screen. Now, the number of tests given out daily is above its goal. ICU beds are below the max, and our PPE is supplied for 7 days. Recently, our contact tracing pulled a 180, now meeting the time requirements for isolation and quarantining contacts. Even our newest criteria, average daily case increases, has hit its mark. Today, the state's leading COVID-19 experts congratulated New Mexicans for meeting these goals to reduce the spread of the virus. So does that mean everything will reopen soon? We asked that question. Good afternoon. The current public health order is set to expire tomorrow, and our cases are not slowing down. Tonight, we take a look at new efforts to help our state's restaurants as cases and finances pose problems. Plus, new details on how the state and APS plan to keep kids fed during online learning. And the future of our state's fall sports in question. What the Lobos are changing as time is running out until their season begins. But first, the latest numbers today. We've now reached another milestone, more than 20,000 cases, with our largest increase at 352, not including the outbreak from Cibola Correctional Center from the other day. 6 more New Mexicans also lost their life to the virus, bringing us to a total of 632 deaths. Hospitalizations went down by a few. Today, there are 158 New Mexicans in the hospital with the virus. The spread rate of the virus, however, is going up in some parts of the state and down in others. Rates in the northwest and southwest parts are above 1. That means for each person who gets the virus, they'll spread it to just over 1 person. Both areas were below 1 last week. The metro is now below 1. It was 1.1 last week. The rate of infection statewide is at 1.09. Remember, our rate should be below 1.05 to meet the gating criteria. Bernalillo County has tested the most people for COVID in New Mexico. You can see behind me here more than 176,000 have been tested. Now, the county has the highest population in the state, and right now there are more than 4,600 total confirmed cases in Bernalillo County, where 20-year-olds make up the most COVID cases at nearly 1,100. 30 to 39-year-olds make up the second most at 732. New data from the state health department shows COVID cases are decreasing in a number of industries like restaurants, gyms, and travel, but it's increasing in one specific area. Action 7 News reporter Marissa Armas tells us which one.
The coronavirus continues to hammer New Mexico. Today we have a lot of new information for you as we hear about new unemployment numbers and the possible future of our state's economy. Plus, more plans in place for schools and warnings against any form of in-person classes. This as UNM is preparing new programs and looking at its budget. But first, the latest numbers here in our state showing absolutely no signs of slowing down. We have just hit 16,456, and it's the third day in a row with a 300 case or higher count. Today it was 319. We're also at 565 deaths in New Mexico. Well, the state's top doctor is digging his heels in when it comes to wearing face masks. As KOAT's Nancy Laughlin reports, some types only help a little.
Good afternoon. I'm Shelley Ribando. Aside from that breaking news, tonight's coronavirus top stories. Our state's biggest school district meeting now to discuss potential crucial changes to the future of school after Labor Day. Plus, with all of our gating criteria met, we asked the governor what's next for our state as it looks like we're ready to reopen. And more students returning to campus in New Mexico, why school leaders here are already preparing for Plan B. Tonight, Governor Lujan Grisham will address the nation at the Democratic National Convention. Action 7 News has the pre-speech interview with our governor. Anchor Doug Fernandez asked her specifically about how she will push the Biden-Harris ticket.
I think it's safe to say that the nation knows who Joe Biden is, but what will you be telling the country tonight about Joe Biden that maybe we don't know?
New Mexico's largest school district has released its reopening plan, but the concerns and questions have just begun. We're going to break it down for you. Albuquerque Public Schools says on August 5th, teachers and staff go back. August 12th, students begin online learning, but no in-class learning until at least September 8th. At that point, they could go to the hybrid system, half in school, half at home. Students would be split into 2 groups and rotate, going to school week by week. With that plan, students would go to school Thursday through Friday. Monday will be used as a deep clean day and an at-home learning day. As we work to answer these questions, Action 7 News is bringing you live team coverage of this decision, reactions, and how school is looking into our state as a whole. Well, for more answers on that, let's go first to Action 7 News reporter Marissa Armas. She tells us what teachers are saying about it. Marissa.
New Mexico's largest school district is back in the building today after over a year of remote learning. They're following the PED's deadline for full in-person reentry. Good afternoon. I'm Brittany Hope.
And I'm Ron Burke. It was an exciting day for many, but still a rocky start to the first day back.
APS reporting connectivity issues for students who are back in person. Action 7 News anchor Kayla Norwood has all the details.
A sweeping new public health order in New Mexico with new requirements for masks and vaccinations, some starting today. One of those requirements is for hospital workers to get their first dose starting Friday. Nancy Laughlin joins us live. And Nancy, this will impact an already strained workforce.
So, Joe, this cold is sticking around.
Yes, that's right, Brittany. Cold temps and more of that on the way. I'll show you when we'll finally get a little bit of relief coming up next.
And help for families to get back on their feet and find their footing in employment. The new state partnership aiming to assist. Plus.
right now it's crunch time.
The NMAA planning for a winter break, as well as what is and isn't allowed before school returns, what student athletes need to know. And Brandon?
Brittany, we're getting a better idea about who's getting the vaccine first. When it comes to kids, they're not just at the bottom of the list, they're not even on the list. I'll tell you why coming up next.
Storms are rumbling through New Mexico, but that's not the only threat your KOAT 7 weather team is tracking. We'll tell you which areas need to stay alert. Stella?
Health officials are also on alert for a new wave of the Delta variant, potentially jeopardizing New Mexico's COVID progress. What that means for our community. Ron?
Also, more venues, centers, and museums reopening. The latest dates to mark on your summer calendar. Plus, the countdown is on for Old Man Gloom to go up in flames. How you can be a part of the burning of Zozobra. On next.
I feel very good. I'm not thinking about concession speech or acceptance speech yet.
Power to change this country is in your hands.
It is Election Day 2020, and we are likely just hours away before we find out who the country will choose as its new leader. Good evening. I'm Shelley Rabando.
And I'm Doug Fernandez. Both nationally and locally, Action 7 News is watching every angle of it for you. Now, we have team coverage all across New Mexico covering the key races, including the close ones for U.S. Senate, Congressional District 2, as well as Districts 1 and 3. And we're staying up to date on the polls and bringing you live expert analysis all night long. But tonight, the campaign season like no other between President Donald Trump and former VP Joe Biden will start to come to a close. Today, Biden was in Pennsylvania while President Trump spent the morning in the RNC Annex. Now, plenty of battleground states are in play tonight where each candidate has spent the last few weeks.
And here they are, the states generally agreed on as ones to watch this evening. There's the list.
Here is another look at how both candidates are performing in New Mexico before the polls close. Joe Biden has risen just a little bit more since yesterday, leading by close to 12 points. Now, in 2016, Hillary Clinton was leading by about 6 points. That's before our former governor, Gary Johnson, took up more of that vote. That's why it was a little bit closer. Now, 270 Electoral College votes are needed to win the White House. Now, one of our votes are counted. New Mexico will award our states 5 votes to the winner.
Security officials throughout the country are on high alert to protect the election against hackers. The biggest threat, disinformation from foreign players.
We do remain on high alert here at DHS and CISA throughout the day and beyond to make sure that the integrity of our election infrastructure is maintained.
DHS actually launched a website to combat common issues today called Rumor Control. Top officials are closely watching disinformation efforts from Russia, Iran, and China. But they assure voters the vote count is secure. More than 100 million ballots have already been cast. These votes represent more than 47% of registered voters nationwide and 73% of the total cast in 2016. 21 states, including New Mexico and Washington, D.C., have seen more than half of their registered voters cast ballots already. The massive voting turnout also reflected here in New Mexico. We've passed our 2016 total, as we just told you, with more than 860,000 New Mexicans casting their ballots.
But of course, that number will climb with ballots from Monday and today. Reporter Stella Sun is live with the voters still making their way to the polls.
Hey, good evening. Just a few hours before those polling locations close at 7 p.m., you can see at this polling place on the west side, there isn't a line formed outside. But the poll workers here tell me that wasn't the case earlier this morning when they opened up shop at 7 a.m. They did see about 38 people waiting in line to cast their ballot. Now, the Secretary of State's office, they tell us that 89,000 people have voted today, but we need 180,000 more folks to vote in order to break that voter turnout. Now, I want to show you something. Just take a look behind me. You can see that this polling location on the west side even blocked off portions of this shopping plaza so that political caravans wouldn't be driving by and be trying to sway voters as they walked into this polling location here. Now, we will bring you more updated numbers on that voter turnout as the night progresses, but for right now, reporting live in Albuquerque, Stella Sun, KOAT, Action 7 News.
Now, absentee ballots can be dropped off until 7 p.m.
As ballots are cast, there are some critical close races which could be swayed by just a few votes. One of those is the race for Senator Udall's Senate seat, where these two candidates you see here have been on the offense for months. Let's go to reporter Brittany Hope watching Ben Ray Lujan's efforts for the Senate. Good evening.
I am following Congressman Ben Ray Lujan's campaign from here at the Democratic Party's headquarters in downtown Albuquerque. The congressman himself tonight is up in Nambe doing all of that last-minute campaigns and phone calls virtually. Right before coming on air, I caught up with him on this Zoom call. He said there are 3 issues that are the most important to him in this race tonight: tackling COVID, health care, and creating more economic opportunities in our state. Remember, Representative Lujan is a 6-term congressman from up in northern New Mexico. Tonight, he has a fair lead ahead of his opponent, Republican Mark Ronchetti. That's where Kayla Norwood is right now.
I'm Kayla Norwood in Albuquerque with the Ronchetti campaign, and I spoke with Mark Ronchetti, the former meteorologist who is now running as a Republican in the U.S. Senate, and he told me that he is feeling good today. He knows he left it out all on the table, and so today he and his campaign, they are putting in calls, sending text messages to his supporters who he says are fired up, and so he just wants to make sure that they make it out to the polls like he did. He and his family, they headed out to the Northeast Heights, to La Cueva High School. That is where he cast his ballot this morning. And then tonight, he will be here at Marriott Albuquerque in Uptown, and this is where he will be watching the results come in, and will be with him following this race. Doug?
Well, this is a key race for our state as Senator Tom Udall is leaving after more than a decade. Our political expert Brian Sanderoff is here. Brian, talk about first why this is so important for Ben Ray Lujan.
Well, you know, Ben Ray Lujan is one of the most powerful members currently in the U.S. House. So it's important to him because he's risking everything in order to get a promotion to the U.S. Senate.
Would you call this race close? In your last poll, it showed about an 8-point advantage for the Democrat.
Well, 8 percentage points I categorize as a comfortable lead. But every poll does have a margin of error, and so we'll just have to wait and see what happens tonight.
Well, following the money, it's been said that Congressman Lujan has spent more money this time around than all of his other campaigns combined. And some of it is outside money. Is his party concerned? Is that why they're sending money in?
I think the party and the political action committees are cautiously optimistic, but it was interesting to see them spending more money in the last couple weeks.
Talk about Mr. Lujan's challenger, Mark Ronchetti. When you talk about name recognition, you have always told me, I've been doing this with you for 18 years, for someone to take on a big name, you need a really big name. And Mark Ronchetti is pretty much known over the entire state of New Mexico.
Right. Mark Ronchetti is a political newcomer, but he came with a certain amount of notoriety, and that has really helped him in his campaign. If he were unknown, he'd be down so much more in the polls.
All right, Brian, thank you. We'll be with us coming up later tonight at 9 and 10 as well. Thank you.
Let's head to southern New Mexico now, where both candidates in one of the closest races in the country are working to close the gap of just 2 percentage points that separate them. We have Action 7 News reporters with both members of this ticket. Let's go first to Brandon Evans. And Brandon, Xochitl Torres Small is looking to hold on to her seat in a very tight race.
U.S. Rep. Xochitl Torres Small believes she's done some good work in the first 2 years, but she's also believed there's still work to be done, which is why she's fighting for every vote she can. Today, making a stop at her old stomping grounds, Mayfield High School here in Las Cruces. Speaking with the U.S. Congresswoman, she believes that it could come down to which candidate gets more voters to the polls in these final hours.
More than 20,000 votes have been cast today in Doña Ana County. That's the difference that it will make. So people showing up today know, people watching TV right now should know that they could be the final deciders for who represents them for the next 2 years.
And as close as the race was in 2018, it could be even closer this year. And her opponent is the same. And now we go to Alamogordo. Shelly Leggett is there. And Shelly, what is the energy like there?
Brandon, the energy here has been pretty relaxed. We just spoke to Yvette Harrell, who is here in Alamogordo waiting for results. She says she spent the last 24 hours reaching out to people who hadn't voted yet, over the phone, through social media, and on the ground. But she also took some time to relax with her friends and family. She says she's nervous, but also excited and confident as a Republican candidate because of the support rallying behind President Donald Trump.
Just having President Trump at the top of the ticket has really stirred up a lot of enthusiasm throughout the state, throughout the district, and really throughout the country.
Harrell says that this go-around she was a much stronger candidate, but the race again is a close one. So she is once again urging people to get out and vote if you have not done so. In Alamogordo, Shelly Leggett, KOAT Action 7 News. Doug, back.
Republican Party of New Mexico offered rides to the poll today, and they are still available until 6 o'clock. Now, the party said, when it comes to the votes tonight, we can choose a future of hope, of freedom, of prosperity, of safety, and preservation of our families.
The Democratic Party of New Mexico is hosting a virtual election night celebration. Governor Lujan Grisham and Senators Tom Udall and Martin Heinrich will be there. They'll watch election night results come in through the evening, and you can sign up if you'd like at the link on your screen. That event starts at 8 o'clock. Still to come, voter turnout and election security in New Mexico. We sit down with the Secretary of State to find out how your vote is being counted. And Marissa.
The fight for votes right here in Bernalillo County reaching the finish line. I'll tell you how the District 1 candidates are spending those final hours of Election Day. Nancy?
I'm Nancy Laughlin. We're taking you to northern New Mexico, where two women are fighting it out for Ben Ray Lujan's old seat. The outlook for these candidates when we come back.
It is 3 days after the election, and there is still no president-elect of the United States.
Neither candidate has 270 electoral votes, and we're at the same total as yesterday, 253 for the former VP and 214 for the president.
But the tides have turned today in Joe Biden's favor in two key battleground states. Take a look. For the first time, Pennsylvania and Georgia now maintaining slight leads. Georgia has not voted blue since 1992 with Bill Clinton, and Pennsylvania went red for the president in 2016.
With those two states and Alaska, Nevada, North Carolina, Arizona, there is a lot to watch. Now, we have team coverage in New Mexico and Washington, D.C. covering this historic race for the White House.
But today brought new rounds of questions regarding counts, recounts, and when we may see a victor finally. More than that in a minute.
Now, here's where the national popular vote is now. Biden is leading by just 3 percentage points, pretty much the same as it's been for 3 days.
Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in 2016 by 3 million more votes than President Trump. In history, only 4 candidates have won the popular vote, but not presidency by the Electoral College. The delay of the presidential votes and the overall election in general has a lot of people experiencing election anxiety.
Action 7 News reporter Marissa Armand spoke to a health professional about what people can do to deal with these types of feelings.
This is actually one of the most important elections happening in our country right now.
But we're also talking about New Mexico issues that are so important to us.
At the congressional level, there's not a whole lot I can do other than advocate.
If I have an opportunity to go to Congress, number one, it won't be partisan in my decisions.
Those are the 4 candidates looking to become one of 3 U.S. representatives in New Mexico on this historic special election day. Only a few hours remain before polls close, and KOAT has you covered. Good afternoon, I'm Ron Burke. We have team coverage on everything from voter turnout to the candidates themselves, as well as real-time results. So let's first meet the candidates who are looking to represent Central New Mexico in Washington. Nancy Laughlin begins our team coverage with a look at Democrat Melanie Stansbury.
Hi guys, we are live at Hotel Albuquerque, and they are just setting up right now. Weather is cooperating at the moment. Now, this event is not open to the public, but they're expecting about 200 to 300 people here tonight, starting around 6 o'clock. And then Melanie Stansbury is expected to arrive after 7 o'clock. Now, I'm told that she is still out campaigning, and so are her staffers. Again, she's going to be arriving and then taking the podium at sometime after 7 here at Hotel Albuquerque. If the weather doesn't cooperate, then they're going to move us indoors. But right now, looks like the sun is out. Live in Old Town, I'm Nancy Laughlin. Back to you.
All right, reporter Stella Sun joins us live now from New Mexico Republican Party headquarters. Stella, what's going on there?
Thanks so much. Republican candidate Mark Moores is currently a state senator, and he's representing Northeast Albuquerque, and he's been representing that area, which is District 21, since 2013. Now, Republican candidate Moores, he is a small business owner in the healthcare industry and is fighting to safely reopen our state now. He also believes there should be less regulation over small businesses. Candidate Moores wants to have more funding for law enforcement in our state. Now, we caught up with candidate Moores earlier today, and here's what he said.
If you're not happy with the way New Mexico's happening, if the crime is too much, the schools aren't performing, this is your chance to get out and vote.
Now, Moores is also running on a platform to repeal the state tax on Social Security for retired folks. And coming up at 5, you can hear from the Republican Party of New Mexico, the chairman, on why Moores is the best candidate to represent the 1st Congressional District. Reporting live here from the GOP headquarters, I'm Stella Sun, KOAT Action 7 News.
And here are photos of independent candidate Aubrey Dunn. He's been spending his day making last-minute calls and virtually campaigning before the polls close. We'll hear from him coming up at 5 and 6. And checking in with Chris Manning now. We did try to speak with him on this big day. He told us he was working until late this evening and was unavailable. The Libertarian candidate has a large focus on immigration reform. Today's vote marks the first time New Mexicans will be allowed to register and vote on Election Day. That changed due to a 2019 law that has been gradually phased in. At last check, 111,000 people voted, over 15,000 more than yesterday. If you live in the 1st Congressional District, you can register and vote at 70 locations until 7 p.m. Now, people we talked to at the polls were passionate about getting out to vote today.
Yeah, I came out for our democratic process to ensure that Albuquerque continues to be a voice nationally. And I think everybody in America should be doing it, 18 and older. I mean, it's your fundamental right. Get out there and vote.
He says his daughter is interested in going into political science, and he feels it's important for her to see her parents exercising their right to vote. A bit of history here. The last special election in New Mexico was back in 1998. Republican Heather Wilson defeated Democrat Phil Maloof for the House seat in the same district after the death of five-term rep Stephen Schiff. It was a close race, 45 to 39%, with the Green Party candidate taking 15%. Now, this is just the start of our full team coverage. Coming up at 5, a live interview with the Democratic chair, and we will also hear from the Republican Party. And starting at 6, our political expert will begin to weigh in. We'll also be cutting into programming following Action 7 News at 6 with the latest results once the polls do close. Good afternoon. I'm Ron Burke. On this election day in New Mexico, KOAT is here covering your voice and your vote and how it impacts your future. We have team coverage for you, from the highly anticipated race for Albuquerque mayor to hundreds of millions of dollars in bonds, which could impact your wallet, and the countdown until the polls close and the turnout at the polls. All that's coming up. But first, who will run the Duke City for the next 4 years? We begin our coverage of each campaign by first sending it to Action 7's John Cardinale. He's been following incumbent Mayor Tim Keller this evening. Hi, John.
Yeah, hey, Ron, we're at Hotel Albuquerque, where Mayor Tim Keller is expected to arrive here at 8 o'clock tonight. Now, right now, not a whole lot is going on. They're just setting up the venue for his arrival. We're told people will start trickling in here around 6 o'clock tonight. Now, according to a recent poll done by the Albuquerque Journal, Mayor Keller is the front runner in this mayoral race, expected to receive 53% of votes. Now, if you take a look at your screen, this is video of Mayor Keller earlier today casting his vote at the Bernalillo County Clerk's Annex with his wife and children. After that, he stopped at a couple voting locations. I caught up with him at Jefferson Middle School and asked him how he feels hours away from election results.
You know, we're very optimistic today. I think we're in good shape, and folks have really come to realize that we need strong and steady leadership going forward, and so we're hopeful for another 4 years.
Now, Mayor Keller is up against Eddie Aragon, a conservative talk show host, and Sheriff Manny Gonzalez. I'm now going to turn things over to anchor Sasha Leninger, who's covering the Sheriff Manny Gonzalez campaign. Sasha?
John, thank you. We're here at Admiral Beverage in the South Valley. This is where Sheriff Manny Gonzalez will hold his election watch party tonight. Just behind those doors here, they open at 6:30. The sheriff says he plans to be here at about 7 or so. We did get the chance to catch up with him just a couple of hours ago. So he, along with his family and several other supporters, lined Manal just outside Delasco Shopping Center, where several voters were in line waiting to cast their ballots. The sheriff telling us he feels good today. He started his day at 4:30 this morning, got a haircut, and then went on with his normal routine, which consisted of a workout and some errands before tonight. He says he feels confident.
As a candidate, what I go through is I leave it all on the field, so to speak. And when I'm done, I know that I've done my best. I'm at peace with myself. After tonight, after the polls close, I know I can put my head on my pillow and go to sleep and have no regrets.
He says everything, of course, is now in the hands of the people, and he says when he wins, he plans to change this city forever, starting with crime and then the homeless crisis. Sheriff Manny Gonzalez, as I said, plans to start being here and watching the election results at about 7 o'clock. Live in the South Valley, I'm Sasha Leninger, KOAT Action 7 News. Back to you.
Sasha, thank you. Let's go to Action 7 News anchor Kayla Norwood now. She's covering Eddie Aragon's campaign. She joins us live from his radio station near the Sunport.
Well, hey, Ron. Yeah, Aragon is broadcasting live from his radio station right now as we speak. Now, I did get to talk with him just within the last hour or so. He told me that he's not even focusing on winning this race tonight. Instead, he's treating this more like a primary because he believes that he can force a runoff. Overall, with his platform, he is focused on the 5 C's. Those 5 C's include crime, COVID, corruption, commerce, and city. Oh, he says he even plans to change the name of mayor to city manager because it's a job. I talked to him just about how he's feeling now that it's election day.
So I feel pretty good. I really like the turnout. I really like the feedback I'm getting directly from all the people who are, interested in the election. And, I feel like people are pushing back on the issues, and they want to talk about substantive issues, not about fraud or any of these other things that have been the dialogue of the election.
Now, we also talked about his strategy and why he thinks that the turnout today is really working in his favor. I have much more on that coming up at 5. Reporting live in Albuquerque, Kaylin Norwood, KOAT Action 7 News.
Kaylin, thank you. You should know as long as you are in line to vote when the polls close at 7, you will be allowed to cast your ballot. Now, to win, a candidate must get more than 50% of the vote. This is to make sure that whoever wins is elected by the majority of voters. If no candidate gets at least half the votes, then the top 2 candidates in the race will hold a runoff election in December. Now, it's likely there'll be some sort of a runoff election because there are 3 candidates running for mayor, and there are 3 city council districts that have more than 2 candidates running. Bernalillo County Clerk Linda Stover tells us voter turnout currently stands at about 25%. We wanted to know how that compares to previous mayoral elections. The last time we voted for mayor was 4 years ago. Back then, about 29% of registered voters turned out. To set a turnout record, we need to hit 38%. That happened 20 years ago when Martin Chavez defeated incumbent Mayor Jim Baca. Now, if you've not voted, you still have time. Polls are open again until 7 at 72 locations in Bernalillo County alone. You'll have to wear a mask, bring an ID, and remember your date of birth. Absentee ballots can also be dropped off at 7. Same-day voting registration, however, is not available.
Whether you're out shopping, dropping off the kids at school, running errands, you will find a voting site near you. This is a big day. Be sure and get out and vote and make your voice heard.
And coming up at 4:30, reporter Stella Sun will put the polls into perspective and bring us those latest vote counts. The ballot includes not just names, but also bond issues up for vote. This includes that proposed $50 million bond for a soccer stadium for New Mexico United. The venue is expected to cost as much as $70 million. The team is chipping in $10 million of its own money, and another $8 will come from the state. But not everyone is on board. Residents from the Bareilles, South Broadway, and Martinez communities are rallying against the stadium tonight. That will be at 5 at Triangle Park. And there are a number of bonds in this election, so we want to know, what is a bond? It's a loan taxpayers take out and pay off over time with interest. City leaders have said it does not raise taxes, but if the economy turns and there's less tax revenue, the city will still have to find a way to pay off that bond. The future representation for our state's biggest school district, APS, is on the ballot. District 3 has 4 candidates. All other districts have 3 candidates running. Here's District 5. These are the 3 people running for District 6, and this is the District 7 race. You can hear from all of the candidates' forms posted on KOAT.com. Now, we're also keeping an eye on several city council races in Albuquerque. In District 1, that's the west side, City Councilor Lan Senna is going against challenger Luis Sanchez. In District 5, northwest Albuquerque, it's Councilor Cynthia Borrego versus challengers Philip Ramirez and former Councilor Dan Lewis. 6 candidates running in District 7. This is east of Central along the I-40 corridor. Diane Gibson holds that seat but is not running for another term. Bernalillo County Clerk Linda Stover says this will likely go to a runoff. And these 3 candidates are running to replace Don Harris in District 9. He's not running. This is the southeastern part of the foothills. Important elections are happening around the country as well today, such as in the Virginia governor's race, where it's neck and neck for Democrat Terry McAuliffe and Republican Glenn Youngkin. The race could signal the 2020 midterm fallout. In the New Jersey governor's race, Democrat Governor Phil Murphy could be the first Democrat governor to be reelected in that state since 1977.
What we've been doing for the past 4 years is working, and that folks want to see more of it.
Other races include mayoral elections in some of America's biggest cities. In New York City, former police captain Eric Adams is seen as the front runner there. In Boston, history will be made with either Michelle Wu or Anissa Isaiba George becoming the city's first woman and person of color to be.
Today, New Mexico joins 7 other states across the country in what's turning out to be a historic primary election.
In our commitment to you here at KOAT, we have live team coverage.
We have teams at polling locations speaking with the candidates vying for your vote and live analysis from political experts.
But first, the coronavirus pandemic is prompting thousands of New Mexicans to vote absentee and mail in their ballots, but many still choosing to vote in person. Action 7 News reporter Brittany Hope is live at the Dos Galos Center.
Hey, we've been live here all morning since 10:30, and the reality is a lot of lines and a lot of masks. I mean, take a look here. You can see the line going all the way to the front door, but also stretching across the parking lot. What's really interesting, though, is a lot of the people you see standing here aren't actually voting inside.
This is my absentee ballot.
I am turning in my absentee ballot. Thank you.
A new reality for voters today.
But I looked at this so many times. I can't tell you how many times I just looked at it and I was like, do I put it in the mail or do I drop it off? And I just felt more comfortable bringing it in.
We saw tons of people walking to the polls holding those white envelopes.
Yeah, the absentee ballot can go right to the front of the line and then just turn it in. So it makes it nice.
Some tell us they simply forgot to mail their absentee ballot, so they had to drop it off. Others worried it wouldn't get to the county clerk's mailbox in time.
I got mine maybe 2 days ago in the mail, and I didn't think it would get through the mail early enough.
And a lot of people say they don't trust sending it in by snail mail.
I just want to make sure it's here. You know, I don't want it to get lost in the mail. That makes me a little bit nervous.
But you can see still a lot of people filling out their ballots in person. Another big factor today, we are still in a pandemic. In elections before this, these booths were all separated for people's privacy. This year, social distancing and safety, huge concerns.
Here you go, sir. Thank you. No problem.
We saw poll workers cleaning every single voting booth, even the pens after someone cast their vote. And outside, people wearing masks, standing 6 feet apart. Remember that the polls here are open until 7 o'clock tonight, and we can't remind you about this enough. You can come here to vote in person, also to turn in your absentee ballot in person. Live here at the Dos Galos Center, Brittany Hope, KOAT Action 7 News.
When you do head to the polls or drop off your ballots, there are a lot of races to watch tonight, and we want to break each one of them down for you. Let's start with KOAT's Nancy Laughlin for the Congressional District 2 race. Nancy.
This is southern New Mexico, and this is a very heated race. It is usually a red part of the state, but not right now, and Republicans are fighting to get it back. On the Republican ticket, Yvette Harrell, Claire Chase, and Chris Mathis. Just 2 years ago, Harrell ran for that seat. She was defeated by Democrat Xochitl Torres Small. Now, this is the primary, so those 3 Republicans who were fighting for that seat will have to go up against Torres Small in November. Now, we will be keeping a close tab on this race and keep you posted on what happens tonight. Nancy Laughlin, KOAT Action 7 News.
As Ben Ray Lujan sets its sight on the U.S. Senate, 11 people are trying to replace him in the U.S. House in Congressional District 3. Action 7 News anchor Shelby Cashman is watching the race for us and talk about the candidates.
Hey, Doug. Well, as you mentioned, 11 people running for this race. This CD3 race is absolutely stacked. We have 4 Republican candidates running, as well as 7 Democrats running. And CD3 is really one of those diverse districts here in New Mexico. Some even saying it is one of the most diverse. Northern New Mexico here, it includes Santa Fe, the capital, but it also includes more rural areas, the mountain areas of northern New Mexico. And as you mentioned, Democrat Ben Ray Lujan has held that seat for more than a decade and has been a Democratic stronghold, leading a lot of people to believe that it will be really hard for a Republican to sort of break in here. But we have spent all day talking to all candidates, reached out to all 11 of them, kind of seeing what they're up to today. You can see some pictures here scrolling of Democrats. Marco Cerna, talk to him, who is currently the Santa Fe DA, and then Teresa Leger Fernandez. She's also hitting the polls. And Leger Fernandez also has the endorsement of Congresswoman Deb Haaland right now. Marco Cerna, though, tells me he spent part of his day dropping off donations to the Pathway Shelter in Espanola.
On Election Day, we also have to remember why we're actually doing all of this, because there's so many people in need in our communities. And Shannon, thank you for all that you do here in Espanola. And if you want to
All right, we were supposed to have another sound from Teresa Leger Fernandez there, but she just tells me she's excited. People were getting out and voting. And as the other candidates get back to me, tell me what they're up to today, send me their pictures. I'll certainly let you know. Back to you guys.
Shelby, thanks. Finally, as Senator Tom Udall is set to retire, several people have their eye on his Senate seat. For that, we go to Action 7 News reporter Marissa Armas.
Well, a big race happening tonight is the race for U.S. Senate. 3 Republicans will take on the only Democrat running for the seat, Ben Ray Lujan. Those 3 Republicans are Mark Ronchetti, Elisa Martinez, and Gavin Clarkson. Ronchetti is a former TV meteorologist. Martinez is a native New Mexican who calls herself an anti-abortion advocate. And Gavin Clarkson is a former professor. I spoke to both Martinez and Clarkson earlier today, who tell me that they've been spending today doing some last-minute pushes on social media and urging people to get out and vote. Both of them are also social distancing, but they do have people making calls for their campaigns. Coming up at 5, I'm going to tell you what the Congressional District 1 race is looking like. Reporting in Albuquerque, Marissa Armas, KOAT Action 7 News.
Months ago, we talked to Congressman Ben Ray Lujan, who's already wrapped up the Democratic nomination for the Senate. Lujan told us the negative Republican primary is only going to hurt his opponent, no matter who it is.
It seems that what each of the 3 candidates have spent their time doing is who's going to be most loyal to President Donald Trump. Well, I'm going to spend my time working on what's most important to the people of New Mexico.
Tonight, we'll be checking back with Congressman Lujan to see what he thinks of his opponent in the general election come this fall. Now, in addition to president, congressional districts, and the race for Senate, we want to break down some of the other races you may see on your ballots. Candidates for State House, State Senate, and State Supreme Court, plus local judges, intermediate appellate courts, and other state offices, like the Public Regulation Commissioner, are up for your vote.
These wonderful DACA kids and their families have a huge burden lifted off their shoulders.
A ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision. SCOTUS blocked the Trump administration's attempt to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. DACA is an Obama-era program that protects hundreds of thousands of immigrants brought to the U.S. as children from being deported. Now, as you would expect, this news is great for the people waiting for it. They told Action 7 News reporter Nancy Laughlin New Mexico is the only home they know.
We spoke with 2 DACA recipients. Both say that they have lived here since they were little kids, and today, both say they are breathing a sigh of relief. Blanca Benuelos tells me she and her family moved from Mexico to New Mexico when she was just 1 year old. When she heard the highest court in the nation ruled in favor of DACA recipients.
Today marks a really historical day for us because I feel like we've been waiting for this for many years.
The Del Norte High School grad and now CNM student says this is something she has been fighting for.
They finally take action and it rules in favor of the people. And I'm just grateful it came to this because we've been fighting for it since 2017.
And Blanca isn't the only one. Luis Leiva also moved from Mexico to New Mexico when he was a little boy.
I came to the United States whenever I was 8. And I have lived here ever since, so this is pretty much the only country that I have ever known.
Luis is now going to law school at the University of New Mexico. His passion is helping others, he says, who are in the same situation.
DACA is a program that gives young immigrants like myself the ability to be free from deportation, to get an education, to go to work, and just pretty much have a regular life here in the United States and contribute to our communities.
Both Blanca and Luis say today was a small victory, and they say it helps prevent them from going into the shadows. Nancy Laughlin, KOAT Action 7 News.
Blanca says the last few years have been very stressful, but not anymore. Well, the governor is responding to the ruling. She said the decision is incredibly welcome, right, and long overdue. She said DACA recipients are our neighbors and are essential parts of our very fabric of our community, and the protections offered to them are critical to both their individual safety and future and to the collective future of New Mexico. Representative Ben Ray Lujan is also applauding this. He said nearly 17,000 people in New Mexico depend on the DACA program to study, work, and contribute to the only country they know, and says dreamers are valued members of New Mexico communities and they need a permanent legislative decision. Happening now, our state's lawmakers are meeting for the first time since the pandemic hit New Mexico in a special session. They're also confronting something like never before, and we're bringing you live coverage of the closed session. Action 7 News' Shelby Cashman is live in Santa Fe.
Hey, Doug. Well, you could say this is a pretty unique way to cover the legislature. Everyone here is wearing masks. We had ours on all day. We just took it off for the purposes of this live shot, but you can see there's no one around us. Everyone is practicing social distancing. The lawmakers, some are on the floor, some even sitting up in the gallery to maintain that social distance.
It's been 5 days since the tragic death of George Floyd when a Minneapolis police officer knelt on his neck. Since then, outrage has spread around the world and right here in Albuquerque. And the videos from these nationwide protests are intense. These are just 9 of a dozen cities that had both violent and nonviolent protests over the death. In addition to Minneapolis on the bottom left, Louisville, Des Moines, Dallas, San Jose, Washington, D.C., Denver, Indianapolis, and Atlanta all held massive rallies. In Minneapolis, the hub of these protests, a 4th night of absolute chaos. Numerous buildings, as you see, completely burned. In addition, a reporter was hit by a rubber bullet and a UPS truck was looted on a highway. The Minnesota National Guard is now deploying an additional 1,000 citizen soldiers in addition to the 700 last night. It's the largest domestic deployment in the 164-year history of that National Guard. Efforts underway to pick up the pieces in Atlanta after protesters went downtown trashing it. Demonstrators descended on CNN's headquarters despite the National Guard being there and warnings from police and the mayor. Protesters also vandalized fire trucks and set other cars on fire, but so far, no arrests. Also just in, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms moments ago announced a curfew for that city starting at 9 o'clock. All of these protests are happening as the officer at the center of Floyd's death has been arrested. We are getting a look at the mugshot of Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis cop. He faces a charge of 3rd-degree murder. 3 other officers involved in arresting Floyd, Thao Thomas Lane and Alexander Kung, were all fired and could face charges, but the governor says it is not an excuse for these protests.
So let's be very clear. The situation is no longer in any way about the murder of George Floyd. It is about attacking civil society, instilling fear, and disrupting our great cities.
Prosecutors say the officer had his knee on Floyd's neck for almost 9 minutes. We're hearing from Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller about the protests and the death of Floyd. He says in part, the city stands with those calling for justice, adding the deaths of Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor are heartbreaking. And although these murders took place outside of Albuquerque, it does not mean our city is shielded from anti-black and racist behavior. White people have not done enough for racism in our country.
It's been days of demonstrations across the country, both violent and nonviolent, over the death of George Floyd.
And we've been following this call for action for the last 4 days here in Albuquerque, which so far has led to 2 arrests.
After hours of peaceful protests yesterday, small groups of, as the mayor called them, agitators began destroying businesses and buildings in downtown Albuquerque.
Action 7 News reporter Marissa Armas spoke to business owners in the area about that damage.
I'm here off of Central, where a lot of the businesses here are cleaning up some of that aftermath. The owner here at FX tells me that she understands the need to peacefully protest, but she doesn't support the small group of people who broke off to cause some of this destruction.
Peaceful protests turning into havoc overnight.
Unfortunately, small groups of agitators are distracting and convoluting from the message the protesters are trying to convey. And in our city, we are seeing this same dynamic.
Today, Mayor Tim Keller saying these small groups are different from the peaceful protesters who are marching for justice for George Floyd, a black man killed at the hands of Minneapolis police.
These were people that don't care about the city and just wanted to destroy it. That is where I'm the most disappointed, is that they possibly took the narrative away from the true issue.
This all comes after the coronavirus heavily impacted the already struggling area.
Downtown's been working so hard over these past years to make it, bring out the culture and make it something great for the Albuquerque community. And to see this happen down here is just, I think it doesn't make any sense to me.
Many business owners also saying they don't support the rioting or looting, but they understand the need for protest during this time in our country.
Violence from those type of police officers or random people that shoot somebody jogging. It's not okay, and it's a sickness that this country has, unfortunately.
Tonight, many are hoping for some resolution for this nationwide unrest.
I really hope it just stays peaceful, because if we can keep that, I think it's a more powerful message when, it's peaceful like that instead of this destruction.
And a lot of the businesses here are actually boarding up their doors and windows to prepare for tonight's protest. The city says that they're actually helping with a lot of this right now. If you're a business who does need help boarding up those doors and windows, you can dial 311. Reporting in Albuquerque, Marissa Armas, KOAT Action 7 News.
Coming up at 6, Marissa tells us what members of the Black community are saying about the protests and riots we're seeing right now across the country.
And Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller also told us what protest protocol looks like for APD, which will continue tonight.
To allow protesting, which is to protect protesters, and it is only to intervene in the case of violence. And that means looting, burning of buildings, gunshots, etc.
He also said that he wants Albuquerque to be a leader in police conduct and equality.
Local MMA fighter John Bones Jones was in downtown last night in the middle of the violence. Take a look at this video from his Instagram page shared with us. That's him in that white t-shirt going up to protesters, taking away their spray cans. In the caption, he wrote, quote, "As a young Black man, trust me, I'm frustrated as well, but this is not the way. We are starting to make a bad situation worse." And today he helped the cleanup in downtown as well. You can see him here in this video carrying plywood to board up a business that was damaged.
Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham issued a statement today on the protests. She said she wholeheartedly commends those who protested peacefully but condemned the protests which turned violent. The governor also said she has no plans to militarize these protests like the president has said, as it would, quote, only serve to inflame the feelings of anger and injustice and will give rise to more violence and chaos.
The New Mexico Republican Party's chairman, Steve Pierce, speaking out against violent protest here in the Duke City. In a statement, he said, quote, "It's understandable that people are frustrated and angry over the shocking death of George Floyd. People have the right to demonstrate peacefully, and we encourage them to exercise this freedom. But it must not be tolerated when demonstrators use protests as an excuse to cause destruction, attack police, and set fires." The local sports world taking a stand as well. New Mexico United is encouraging people to be peaceful and productive right now, to go out and vote, fill out the census, and talk to their peers. On their team's Facebook page, they said, quote, "New Mexico United will always stand side by side with the disenfranchised who find themselves the underdogs in what may feel like an unsurmountable fight."
Today, George Floyd's death continues to spark outrage with some protests turning violent. Action 7 News reporter Bree Jackson is in Washington, where Bree, President Trump criticized local leaders.
Good evening, Shelby. That's right. President Trump lashed out at governors, calling their handling of the protest weak and urging states to crack down.
What's his name? George Floyd! Calls for justice from the scene of George Floyd's death. His brother urging an end to violence. Peace on the left, justice on the right. Peace on the left, justice on the right. Video showing a white officer kneeling on Floyd's neck sparked nationwide demonstrations against racial injustice. Supporters also calling for police reform. New York City's mayor says that includes releasing the disciplinary record of bad cops.
These people should not be in the police force, and it's our job to get them out.
While local leaders say most of the gatherings stayed peaceful, in some cities they turned violent, with people damaging buildings, cars, looting, and starting fires, including in the nation's capital.
Smashed windows and looting are becoming a bigger story than the broken systems that got us here.
The White House criticized governors for letting protests get out of hand.
It's gotten to the point where today the president has said enough is enough.
During a teleconference, the president urged governors to use aggressive tactics, including calling in the National Guard. We have
350,000 plus in the National Guard and nobody wants to use them. And their cities are ransacked and they're a disgrace all over the world.
Now tonight, some cities are putting a curfew in place to try to curb the violence. In New York City, the curfew begins at 11 p.m. Here in Washington, D.C., the curfew begins at 7 p.m. In Washington, I'm Bree Jackson, KOAT Action 7 News.
Bree, thank you. And George's funeral is expected for this Thursday.
Happening now, new information surfacing on the death of George Floyd. We have just learned an independent autopsy of George Floyd shows he died of asphyxiation from, quote, sustained pressure on his back and neck. And the medical examiner listed it as a homicide. This is different from the official autopsy, which said restraint added to his death, but it ruled out asphyxiation or strangulation. His family now is asking for peace.
Y'all doing nothing. Because that's not going to bring my brother back at all. It may feel good for the moment, just like when you drink. But when it comes down, you're going to wonder what you did.
his brother there. Very, very powerful. Floyd's family attorney is calling for more serious charges and calls it premeditated murder. He also asked the other officers involved be arrested. We do know ex-officer Derek Chauvin is now on suicide watch while facing charges of third-degree murder.
Right now to our northern neighbor, where the Colorado community is grieving following that mass shooting that left 10 dead. Today, a lot of questions in an effort to get answers.
Our team is following not only what happened, but also connections to us right here in Albuquerque and the tough decision lawmakers are now facing. Here are the very latest details and what we know so far. So first-degree murder charges have been filed against this man, 21-year-old suspect Ahmad Al-Aliwi Alyssa. Police say his motives are unclear. The gunman purchased an AR-style weapon just last week. His actions left 10 people dead. Their names are on your screen. Those victims ranging in age from 20 to 65. One of them, Boulder police officer Eric Talley.
We're getting intense video out of this shooting showing this play out moment by moment. When the first reports came in of a shooting at the store called King Soopers, we know police were there within minutes. You can see they used a vehicle to ram into the building. And at the same time, a fire truck lifted SWAT officers at the top of that building. At one point, the shooter barricaded himself inside. Officers tried to communicate with him. Finally, an hour after the first calls came in, police were able to arrest him. And a local tie making this tragedy hit even harder. The police officer who was killed in that massive shooting was raised in Albuquerque.
Nancy Laughlin is live with more on Officer Eric Talley. And Nancy, he was the father of 7 and a beloved husband and son.
That's absolutely right. He was an Albuquerque son. He was raised here. I spoke to his mom this morning and she tells me he was a man of very deep faith. Eric Talley was a brave man, the first officer on scene of a massive shooting. Family members say the 1988 Highland High School grad went on to get a master's degree from Ball State University, that he loved technology. He was a beloved husband and devoted father.
He has 7 children, 7 beautiful children, ranging from the ages of 7 to 20. He's a strong Catholic and deep faith. He loves his wife.
Eric's mom told me after his friend was killed by a drunk driver, Eric decided to become a police officer to protect and serve. For more than a decade, he did. She said in the past year, his job became increasingly difficult, with people cursing, even spitting on her son.
Why so much hate, Nancy? Why? Why? My son gave his life to save those people at the King Savers. He gave it all. And the hate still continues. Oh God, help the child.
She said the two spoke every day. When she heard there was a shooting in Boulder, she looked through the video, looking for Eric. Then the call came, her granddaughter telling her Eric was gone.
My son, Eric is my son. He was so deeply loved by everyone.
Obviously, you all, a very emotional interview, understandably. She tells me that she spoke to Eric shortly before the shooting, and their last conversation, he was planning his daughter's birthday. Live in Albuquerque, I'm Nancy Laughlin. Back to you.
Nancy, thank you. And Nancy will have more about Officer Eric Talley and the message his mother is so passionate about getting out to the public. That'll come up next. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham issued a statement following the mass shooting in Colorado. You can see she wrote, "I am heartbroken and angered by yesterday's shooting in Boulder." She said she was saddened to learn about Eric Talley.
This is at least the 7th mass shooting in Colorado that began with Columbine back in 1999. That's when 2 students walked in, opened fire, murdering 12 students and a teacher. Another horrible mass shooting was in Aurora in July of 2012 when a gunman went into a crowded movie theater and killed 12 and wounded 58.
In the last 3 years, the number of mass shootings has doubled from 337 to 711. That's any incident where 4 or more people are injured or killed. There have been 101 incidents so far this year, including the spa shootings in Atlanta just last week. Last March, a man killed 4 people and himself at a gas station in Missouri. And a gunman killed 7 people and injured 24 others in a shooting spree in Texas in August 2019. And just before that, the back-to-back mass shootings in Dayton and El Paso. President Biden ordering flags lowered to half staff in honor of the 10 people killed in the Boulder shooting.
Today, the president and Democrats in Congress are vowing to push through tougher gun laws. Sally Kidd is in Washington with the story.
Now here's Brittany on the stock market craziness.
Yeah, Doug, talk about craziness. So if you look anywhere online, social media, on TV, the news, this is what people are talking about right now. So we're going to break down what's happening. Amateur traders are now going head to head with some of the world's biggest banks and hedge funds in the stock market. The group working with the app Robinhood to send stock for GameStop skyrocketing to a value of more than $24 billion in just days. But the pros on Wall Street are losing because they were betting on GameStop to fail. That's a process known as shorting the stock.
You borrow shares of the stock and you sell it. And if the price goes down, then you can buy it back at that lower price and pocket that difference. But if you're wrong and the shares go up, then you're going to have to buy back the stock at that higher price. And that difference is a loss for you. That's painful.
The group now targeting companies like BlackBerry, Build-A-Bear, and AMC Theaters. The SEC says it's working with regulators to assess the volatility and review the activities of certain investors. These amateur traders congregating on a Reddit thread called Wall Street Bets. The founder of the group says he was not expecting such a surge.
I predicted the trajectory where things were going, but by no means did I predict the timing and the magnitude. This thing has happened so quickly, so fast.
He adds they believe they're getting the big guys to show their hands. That group now has 4 million users. So surely things have to flip back to normal eventually, right? Well, the author of The Wolf of Wall Street and Wall Street expert Jordan Belfort is now weighing in.
It's like a modified pump and dump, because at the end of the day, it will most certainly go back down because it's not trading based on any rational fundamental value.
TD Ameritrade and Charles Schwab are also now restricting certain trades too. But today, that was not the day. You can see GameStop gave up those gains, falling 150 points. But that is still 1,250% more than where it is normally. Hedge fund titans have lost an estimated $5 billion so far. Robinhood, that app we told you these groups are using, faced lawsuits after it blocked trades of these stocks and now is offering limited trades.